Hey guys, it's Mathel here once again, and for what was potentially my last character on Legacy League, I decided to go with Wildstrike. Now, for me personally, I think the best possible Wildstrike ascendancy would have to be Pathfinder Ranger, but I really didn't want to make my 15th Pathfinder for the league. It's just really strong for the overall skill because of the Ellie Pen, the flasks, the speed, all of that. But since I didn't want to do that, I thought the next best bet was a Raider, because I still wanted to attack really fast to proc lots of delicious arc chains, and move really fast with whirling blades, and stack a decent bit of attack speed, so that you never feel bad being locked down while using multi-strike and a name-locking skill. Now, quite recently, with the last major patch, Wildstrike got a slight change, going from 60% of your fizz converted to elemental damage, straight up to 100% of fizz converted to elemental damage. Now that just makes the skill a bit easier to scale from fizz to elemental conversion, and I'll talk about how I built it in just a sec. For now, there's just a few little clips here of how Wildstrike has been performing in the map scene, which has been very admirable indeed. It's been very fun, very fast, rather efficient, and I've been maintaining something like 150 to 200 mil XP an hour, up from level 88 to level 90 quite easily. And it's been a fairly fun and effortless experience. The biggest challenge for me was, of course, balancing my Wise Oak Flask for all 3 resists, which I've only just now managed to do, but when you do get it going, it is absolutely incredible, so it's worth doing, and it's not that hard to do, it just requires some tinkering. It's not as if it's expensive, it just means you have to stare at your gear for a while and figure out where you can get some pluses, where you can get some minuses. And overall, the Wildstrike clear speed has been really good. The only real problem with Wildstrike these days is fixing the single target for the end game bosses. This character has not yet gone on to tier 16s, Guardians or Shaper or Uber Itziri, but I do have a strong feeling it's not going to be amazing, even though I'm steamrolling the current level of content all the way up to tier 15. The tier 16s are on a completely different level, and I think I will probably have to use an Abyssus specifically for those fights. Now, this character is built somewhat defensively. I don't have that much life, I'm almost at 6k, but I have a good amount of evasion, dodge, Valpact, Fortify, and I attack really fast, and my sustain on frenzies is really nice too. So overall for Guardians, there is a potential that it won't be that bad for my single target while wearing Abyssus. I do think I should be able to survive. I will of course be going in without the Abyssus to start with and see just how bad the single target may be, and then chuck on the Abyssus when I feel it may be required. Overall though, without being CI, which of course affords you quite a lot better passives, a Pathfinder, and some stronger gear, I probably won't be doing any world-breaking single target DPS on the Guardians, even with the Abyssus, but I really wanted to make a life-based build for, you know, a change, since quite recently I have made a few ES-based builds, and I wanted to go back to the roots of fun life-based and just attacking really fast while using a somewhat hipster skill, which, you know, is actually fairly satisfying. It is just, I feel, a bit of a shame that this isn't the most starter league friendly skill, I don't think, at least not in a crit version like this, because you do really have to build into some fairly nice gear, or just specific gear, not that expensive, but specific, and ultimately it's not going to be easy to ramp when you are just starting out. A non-crit sort of life-based two-hand Wildstrike could be okay. The problem is it's just going to be worse than something like an Earthquake. We'll see how that travels in 3.0, as maybe Wildstrike will see itself used as a league starter. Who knows, crazier things have happened. I just want to highlight one quick bit here. Yeah, it's not great for Itziri, as we already know, because of the chain portion. It's kind of just a crapshoot as to whether or not you're gonna chain and then kill yourself on the mirror phase. So now I just wanted to go over how Wildstrike works and the character itself. So there are just a few things I feel I should talk about in Wildstrike, because it is kind of an extremely confusing skill when you read it and try and imagine how you're supposed to scale it, as are a lot of skills in Path of Exile, like a Wildstrike. So what it does does is you initially have a hit that deals a base of 173. It's a melee hit. And with every hit, it then has a secondary attack portion to it that is either something that's like a freeze pulse, a flame surge, or a arc. Now, the freeze pulse is a projectile, the flame surge is a area skill, and the arc is just an attack, basically, with a chaining modifier to it. All of them are technically attacks, they're not spells, and they are scaled through attack modifiers, as well as the appropriate things, projectile area, all of that. So generally you want to scale really general for it. So we're talking just weapon elemental damage, general elemental damage, multi-strike, added fireworks if it's based off of fizz, crit, faster attacks, all of that shit. But at the beginning, if you're scaling through physical like I am with 2 physical claws, it is just a pure physical skill. And then all of that physical gets converted to either fire, cold, or lightning based off of the hit that then gets generated. So what happens is you have all of this fizz here on the tooltip, which is currently a lie, because then that fizz gets converted to elemental, one of these 3 elements, as soon as you hit with it, and it is scaled by all of your elemental damage as well. So it's really confusing how much damage you're doing and how you're scaling your damage. Basically, the way I'm scaling is through physical initially, which then gets converted to elemental, and it's scaled off of all of your elemental damage as well. So you can still scale through physical initially, and that's totally fine. And then the secondary part, which then gets converted to elemental, gets scaled by elemental. Now that is the more confusing way of scaling it, from fizz to elemental to all the other sorts of attacks, or you can just go pure elemental with tri-elemental weapons, ignoring all the fizz nodes and just using pure elemental nodes like these, and there's not too many available is kind of the problem. But that is the easier or more straightforward way of doing it. The problem is you might just run out of scaling because physical, you have some weapons that can get really good, and then you have lots of nodes that scale the fizz. Which is another reason as to why we went Raider, because it has some nice damage scaling here with 40% elemental, as well as the frenzies, which then give you additional attack damage. Then you scale your frenzies, which are just plain more damage overall, and the way we're just scaling is through crit and crit multi. So that's the intricacies of the build, and it is kind of confusing, but once you get the hang of it, it kind of makes sense. So in the end, for now, I do have Wildstrike attached to weapon elemental damage, multi-strike, added fire because we're fizz, crit strikes, and then faster attacks. The faster attacks I will most likely drop for crit multi-gem as soon as I start to get serious for single target, and then the crit multi I'll replace for Ellie focus on actual single target fights. And then the weapons I've chosen to get are 2 claws, and the reason for claws is you can get some pretty good damage out of them. They're not too expensive on the weapon scale, and these nodes over here save you having to get any leech down here. So they are a combo, they save you having to get roughly 5 points. But that said, crafting a claw seems to be pretty tedious. Right now, all you need for a claw is basically a tyrannical or a merciless, and then multi-mod it, and it gets you something like this, which is, 2 or 3x worth. If you can't get any of that, the alternative at the moment, I feel, is dual Doriani catalysts. They have decent physical damage, up to about 300, and they have a huge portion of elemental damage attached to them as well, which you won't see scaling your fizz until after you actually hit, so the tooltip, once again, a lie. The only problem is you don't have any mace-specific nodes, but if you go the dual catalyst route, you try and get as much crit multi as possible from your jewels, and you do end up saving about 10 points here and here from the claw nodes, which you then have to reinvest 4 points into here, and then you can probably wear an Abyssus. An Abyssus means that you'll take a lot more damage, but you'll have about 6 extra passives to spend defensively, so you can get more life. You can travel over here, rework your tree a bit, and get more life, and that makes up for the crit multi that you would otherwise not have by not going a specific weapon spec. And I think currently these dual catalysts are pretty damn close on pure DPS to my claws and claw nodes. If I take out the claw nodes and just wear these 2, and then the Abyssus, it becomes much better, but the problem is we then also leap slam. If you can get used to the leap slam attack and sort of feel, then it doesn't feel too bad, but it it's definitely worse than whirling blades in the end, but something you can get used to and is manageable. But since I already have the 2 claws, I decided to go the claw route and only do the catalyst route for the end game when I go for a bit of a respec to show you the damage in the future. Besides that, the gear, you're trying to go for as much flat fizz and weapon elemental damage, so it's one of those characters similar to a Wander that the more currency you invest, the better it's going to get, and the chain enchant on the helm is roughly what you're going for because the chain provides the most clear speed and it feels the nicest to use. By no means necessary, it's just a little bit of extra clear speed, otherwise damage enchants and all that will be good too. And lastly, as I mentioned, I do have the Wise Oak, which is now triple capped with all of my flasks up. So as you can see here, 203 to all res over capped, meaning I get the 20% pen and the 10% reduction to all 3 elements, which is very important for our maximum DPS potential. And the 2 auras I'm running are currently Herald of Ash and Hatred, and we'll be using Ellie Weakness as our curse of choice. Currently no power charges because I don't really need them. I may get a weapon swap with the Jaws of Agony to put that in. That's kind of the bare bones guide for this character. I will maybe go into a bit more detail after the next video for Guardians and all that, if it becomes successful enough. This should be enough to get you started if you want to copy something like it, and I'll definitely link all the gear and all that into the thread, as well as the passive tree that you can also follow. For now, that's it for this character and video, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.